Wonderful. Good morning. Welcome back to the conference today. My name is Kelly Miller. I'm with Mantech. I'm an executive director here, and we are honored to support AFCEA with this theater. So I have the honor of introducing our next speaker, Mr. David Lago. So to tell you a little about Mr. Lago, he is the IT cybersecurity specialist with the Cloud Computing Program Office with DISA. He is the product owner of the DoD Cloud Infrastructure as code project for the Cloud Computing Program Office. Prior to this role, he served as a civilian at the Office of Naval Intelligence, leading cloud and DevOps. He also has many years as a contractor, supporting various defense customers. He also holds a Master's of Science degree from Johns Hopkins University and a bachelor's from James Madison University. Please join me in giving him a warm welcome.
All right, thank you. Good morning. Really appreciate people attending. 8:15, after a conference night is brutal. As Kelly said, I'm Dave Lago. I'm from the HAC. That is formerly the Cloud Computing Program Office. We're now the Hosting and Compute Center from DISA. Pleasure to be here. Appreciate AFCEA for hosting this and just getting the word out on what we're doing here. All right, so a little bit about kind of a personal thing about me. I have young kids at home, and the other day they got 2 pieces of construction paper together. They got a piece of tape, and they made themselves a laptop. And I was like, man, that is so awesome. And then I started looking, and I'm like, what is that laptop running? Anybody guess? Teams, right? They talk about, the Isaacson biography of Steve Jobs. There's a scene in there where he's basically saying that, Steve Jobs is at the airport and he sees a kid a toddler trying to manipulate a TV like you would an iPhone. And in that very moment, that's when Steve Jobs, realized that he had a hit. So DoD, my 5-year-old is telling you that you have a major hit with Teams. They see dad in the basement 8-9 hours a day, on Teams. And really, it also, I think, is a great example of kind of the power of the cloud for transformation. If you think about kind of the ability to take a capability like this and stand it up in weeks and make it available to the entire DoD enterprise, which is what CCPO did with CVR. I mean, what an amazing, transformation that is. And personally, I came from the intelligence community. I didn't do a lot of remote work, until I came to DISA. I can't envision a world, without at least some telework, going forward. So it has really transformed, what we're doing. More about the Hosting and Compute Center. It's a newly created center in DISA to empower the warfighter to execute the mission at speed. We operate using product management practices and programs to ensure rapid progress on our diverse, ever-evolving product portfolio and innovation initiatives. Ultimately, we're here to amplify DISA's posture as the trusted advisor to connect and protect the warfighter in cyberspace. Furthermore, the acting director, Ms. Sharon Woods, has implemented a flexible and innovative culture which encourages creative solutions to longstanding problems. She also lets me continue to speak publicly, which I'm amazed, but I appreciate that. Many of you may have heard this spiel before, but here's the problem statement that we're looking at in the Department of Defense. Adopting the cloud is pretty hard, and it's really hard in the Department of Defense, to be honest with you. There's a lot of complexity in going to the cloud, and there's a lot of upfront engineering that has to go on. People often refer to it as a journey, right? You're going on your cloud journey. And for customers, we're realizing that journey is taking them years to get something significant into the cloud. And so we really want to help customers adopt the cloud sooner. As part of that journey, they have to figure out their virtual networking design, right? The whole networking part is totally different in the cloud. They have to figure out their least privilege model. They have to figure out their virtual data center security and management services, VDSS and VDMS. They need to figure out what other enterprise services they're offering. You have to write infrastructure as code to make it a repeatable thing that you can deploy again for DevOps. Then you have to go through an A&A process with 1,000 CCI requirements and upload hundreds of screenshots into EMAS. You have to go through a process to get a cloud access point CAP connection, right? And we haven't even talked anything about the mission app yet. So maybe it's more of a quest than a journey. And ladies and gentlemen, let's save the journey for the hobbits. DoD just wants to get there already. Before I get going, I want to say that there is no one-size-fits-all solution. What we've done here is we're taking advantage of the DevSecOps tools from the cloud service providers themselves, right? That may not be right for everybody. We need to encourage as many different approaches to get the best technology to the warfighter, because that's really what matters. Infrastructure as code, that term, it's just a fancy term for a script that deploys cloud resources. You can think of the DoD Cloud IaC baselines as just templates that build secure cloud environments through automation. We have 2 CSP baselines currently, one for AWS and one for Azure. These all consist of services with a DISA provisional authorization. So think of them kind of like bundled and now offered, as an architecture that can be deployed in automation. We're currently, the goal, we have 2 CSPs now. The goal is to have all of the major CSPs, have a cloud baseline like that. So we work with customers to help them jumpstart their cloud journey. We can do a 3 to 4 hour session and take 7 months off the average, that cloud journey that we talked about before. And we do this for free through DISA. So there are many 4Gov IaC baselines available. Why is this one unique? Well, for starters, it's the only one that comes with an ATO. Right, so we realized that was a critical thing, and it is a decentralized kind of model. So you're taking this baseline, you get 132 inheritable controls. They're in EMAS for you to download, and you think about the amount of time that we spend, in the A&A process and how resource intensive that is. It's a really big deal. It's the only Gov product in a CSP marketplace. So we're currently in the Azure Gov marketplace. Type DoD, you'll see us there. And it's the only one developed with CRADAs. I really want to thank AWS and Microsoft. As part of the collaborative research and development agreements we have, we get it's a win-win. We get access to their product teams and get kind of real-time design input. And to be honest, the CSPs get more cloud adoption. They're not making money if it's taking people years to go through the process to get to the cloud. We've done 15 deployments, military services, combatant commands, and Fourth Estate, and we kind of do like a train the trainer type model where we'll work with your IT team to help them learn to deploy the baseline into their account so that they can do it themselves in the future. We have a repo that's available in addition to the CSP marketplace where you can pull it down if you have a CAC card, pull down the baseline, see the documentation, and proceed from there. And again, just the goal is just to foot stomp it, is to just accelerate cloud adoption across DoD as a whole. All right, so here's kind of the official definition. I'm just going to focus on a few key words here. So pre-configured. So these are again templates to stand up cloud environments. This is not a centralized service where we're going to host your applications or anything like that. These are templates that you take and you go be your own cloud operator. They come with the pre-authorized. I talked about the 132 common controls. That's significant. If you think about from an IaaS perspective, we're going to talk more about that. There's about 28 controls there. So you put them together, it's about 40% of the controls that are in EMAS. You can say, well, that's kind of a low number, but in NIST 853, half those controls roughly are process and policy, something that a technology solution like this can't solve. All right, so okay, and then the PaaS part of this. These are all managed services from the CSPs. Really recommend that you take some time, if you're not familiar with the difference between IaaS and PaaS, that you take some time to learn about that. I think that it's not well understood, I think, in the Department of Defense, that distinction. There is from DoD CIO-IE, there is a reference implementation. If you're familiar with the CNCF, the container, cloud native container framework, there's actually a managed service equivalent of it. So again, another approach, to solving, the design in the cloud. Some of the PaaS services that are out there, I have listed here things like Azure App Service and AWS Elastic Kubernetes Service. There's Google Container Engine. Oracle has PaaS as well. So the point of this, and we're going to talk more about it, is kind of putting more of the responsibility, on the CSPs. And the last part are the security tools. So we also leverage the native security tools that come from the CSPs for a couple of reasons. One, they have a DISA PA already, right? They require less integration, and they're less costly compared to traditional data center tools. So I'm not saying other tools are not possible in this baseline. You can certainly expand it and incorporate those. All right. So if I did a raise of hands, who thinks artificial intelligence is important, I think everybody would raise their hand, right? If I said who's running AWS SageMaker in production, raise your hand. Not a single person, right? So we talk about how important artificial intelligence is in the Department of Defense. You open a newspaper, and here we have this largely turnkey, cost-effective solution, and we're not using it, right? And I think, personally, I think it's a culture thing, right? DoD loves virtual machines. It's like a teddy bear or a blanket. They have virtual machine, tunnel vision, right? And the result is that we're leaving all this capability, on the table. These services are there for us. Imagine all the work that these vendors went through to go through the FedRAMP process, huge investment to get a DISA PA. Now they're all here, and we're not using them because we're so focused on virtual machines. I can tell you, I came from the intelligence community. We were chomping at the bit. When they would add a new PaaS service to C2S, chomping at the bit to get access to that. I don't see that enthusiasm in the broader DoD. I'm hoping that starts to change as people start to understand kind of what's available to them. When DoD leadership talks about the need for cloud transformation, they're not really talking about IaaS, right? IaaS are virtual machines. There's some gains you get from IaaS. There's no doubt. You don't have to go through an acquisition process. You don't have to pick up the server from the loading dock and put it in a rack. But IaaS puts most of the controls on the mission owner, right? So they say the shared responsibility model. That shared responsibility model skews really heavy mission owner, right? So if you're using IaaS, you're only getting 6%, of the common controls, right? So it's a low number. There's more onus on the mission owner. The real promise in cloud is in PaaS and SaaS, which allows us to field capabilities faster and with better technology. 365, Office 365 is an example. We're also going to do an example with Blue Heron, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, where a command and control system was built in 16 days with 3 FTE to support the evacuation efforts in Afghanistan. All right, so more on PaaS. So the way I kind of describe it, I think of IaaS as Cloud 1.0. It looks a lot like the data center we have today, except instead of a rack, you have a virtual machine. We have to harden it. We have to integrate all that middleware. We have to install host-based security. We have to patch it, et cetera, et cetera. In Cloud 2.0, we're migrating a lot of that to the CSPs. Let them harden it. Let them integrate the middleware. Let them install the host-based security. Let them patch it, right? If you think about how much time we spend, in that middleware and OS box there in the Department of Defense, it's a lot, right? Maybe it's kind of the focus, unfortunately, right? We're spending too much time there, and what happens? It detracts from the mission applications. So we're spending all this time, trying to stand up a landing zone and complete STIGs and do the hardening and patching that we end up not having the budget to modernize our applications or do more with them. So the other big selling point is innovation, right? So here's a quiz question. Who can innovate faster on enterprise IT, the federal government or cloud service providers? Seems obvious, right? But I've seen this play out multiple times, in my career. Just to give you an example, okay, so you built a container platform, right? Okay. How are you going to do serverless? How are you going to do AI/ML? How are you going to do quantum, right? So to really, the goal here is to take advantage of this innovation from the CSPs to really be able to modernize and use the latest technology. There are PaaS services for just about everything. If you go online, you can see them: containers, serverless, Internet of Things, AI, ML, virtual reality. Literally, you name it, there's probably a PaaS service that's out there. So a fun part of my job, I get to talk to a lot of folks from all across DoD, and sometimes I talk to the security people, and there's a spectrum, for sure. There are more traditional compliance people, and then there are more progressive compliance people. And I'm describing the whole PaaS part, and they say, well, we can't use that. And I said, well, why can't you use that? And they said, well, it doesn't have HBSS. I said, okay, are you aware that we're talking on O365, which doesn't have HBSS either? So, I think that there is part of this is educating, customers about what these new models look like, SaaS and PaaS, and I think this is a great analogy for the hack, right? And formerly CCPO. We're not traditional, but that's okay, right? This is technology. Technology evolves. Compliance has to evolve as well. All right, so here's what's in every baseline. So we have the infrastructure as code templates themselves. So this is what builds out the environments. We have a least privilege model. So these are kind of a curated set of roles, and permissions of what an admin can do, and et cetera, that meet government requirements. And then a major part are the security policies. So the security model is different in PaaS than it is in IaaS. There are no AWS or Azure STIGs, right? What there are security policies, right? So in AWS you have config rules, in Azure you have Azure policies, and these make sure that your environment is locked down properly. Are your S3 buckets private? Is auditing set to save for more than a year? Things like that. The nice thing about it, and I always talk, when I talk to security folks, is that I think they're going to like this one better because it's all there in one place. There's a dashboard that comes with these things, and you can see that, in real time. The direction we got from DISA RME, from Mr. Greenwell, as part of our ATO, was to work with the EMAS team as well. So we're currently working with the EMAS team and have given them the API design to send that policy information in real time to EMAS. So that's something that is coming here on the horizon. And then the last part is the global directory. So a major pain point in going to the cloud is configuring CAC level authentication, and that's something we have pre-built into this baseline with Global Directory. Global Directory is DoD's O365 authentication service, also part of ICAM, if you're familiar with that. So we've pre-built that in, and that is a really a huge time-saving feature. Definitely saves weeks in your cloud journey. All right, so this is kind of a cloud education slide here for those who aren't familiar with it. So it's a spectrum, right? On the left is cloud agnostic, right? So the thought of cloud agnostic is that I'm going to have this baseline. I'm going to run it in AWS one day, and then the next day I'm going to run it in Azure, and the day after that I'm going to run it in Google. If you meet somebody who does that, let me know, because I haven't seen anybody do that. But that has been kind of the dominant focus of the Department of Defense is cloud agnostic. And so, on the far right, we have CSP native, and that's really what we've done here. Is we have intentionally locked in, vendor lock-in, right? But we're doing it with all of the big players, right? So that's why we have a separate baseline for each one. If you're doing cloud agnostic, you're typically talking about a Terraform script, right? You're going to run the Terraform script. But that Terraform script is usually more IaaS focused, right? The PaaS services that we're targeting are more nuanced, right? You couldn't have one script to rule them all like that. And so what we do is we use the native IaC language of the CSP. So for the AWS side, we use cloud development kits and CloudFormation. On the Azure side, we use Azure Resource Management templates and blueprints. All right, so when we built these, we had to make them modular, right? We realized that we want to make these satisfy, as many use cases in the Department of Defense as possible, right? And people consume cloud differently. So there's three kind of major ones, and we have customers, in all of these. One is they're baked into a platform. So we're seeing a lot now in the Department of Defense. I came from the intelligence community. It's the same thing. They stand up a platform, right? Sometimes it's around an AO. It can be around an organization. So in that case, we can take the security policies that we have, and deploy them. I don't like the term, but they say brownfield deployment, right? So it's an existing architecture. We're going to deploy them in there and get them up and running. So that's one approach. I think that there's a lot of potential with PaaS as more and more demand signal comes from the Department of Defense for them to leverage more of the PaaS services from these platforms they have today. The next one is peered to a traditional SCCA provider. So you're deploying the entire architecture, and then you're going to peer it up essentially to somebody else's VDSS and VDMS stack. And we have a lot of folks that go that route. And then the last one is getting a lot of interest in the Department of Defense, and that's kind of like this decentralized model, essentially, where this baseline, VDSS and VDMS, are satisfied by PaaS, right? So you are your own VDSS and VDMS provider, right? And you can connect that then to a BCAP, right? That's one option. You can also connect it and be a CNAP. So if you're following the Cloud Native Access Point, that's a reference implementation that came out of the DoD CIO, and you're basically operating, off the DoD, and there are folks that are doing that. So we had to make this flexible to support a lot of different use cases. So it's kind of interesting to see how this is evolving. Okay, so obviously the theme here is we're using the native tooling, right? So for our continuous integration, continuous deployment tooling and pipelines, for AWS, use the AWS native tools. If you ask any technical questions, I'll have to bring up HC because you're going to stump me. And the same thing goes for Azure. We're using Azure DevOps, on that side. All right. So recently we got the opportunity to support the Transcom Air Mobility Command. I think that this is just an example of how we can do it faster and cheaper and better by using the cloud. So Transcom AMC needed a way to track the evacuees and flights during the Operation Allied Refuge. They partnered with DoD CIO IE, and by the way, they are a major partner of ours on this and a co-owner of this product, MITRE, and they built a command and control system, in 16 days with 3 FTEs. I think that this is also one of these uniquely cloud kind of stories, right? If I, they went from pilot to production in 72 hours. So if I had a server in a lab somewhere, right, and I said, okay, I did a pilot, and now I want to go to production, that wouldn't work, right? The scaling, would not be there, right? So this is something that scaled to support production in 72 hours. The other amazing thing is that, forget containers, this is serverless. So they jumped, the container thing and went straight to serverless. So that is a super cost-effective way to run workloads, and you're putting the responsibility for scaling entirely, on the CSPs, and they're frankly better at, managing that than we are. They also took advantage of the global directory integration that I talked about, right? So they had CAC authentication, and then they used the CNAP. So you're using the native tools, right, from the CSP, things like, Azure WAF, and Azure Firewall and Azure Active Directory in this case. So just more on the Blue Heron architecture of the services they used here. What's really amazing to me about this, as a taxpayer, is the operating cost of this and the cloud account, including dev and production, is like $4,000 a month. Right, so you think about that. That's how much rent in Washington D.C. costs now, I'm told. So that's part of the message here is being more efficient, right? Being faster and more efficient, and bringing better technology, to the warfighter. The point I bring that up, and I get the question a lot, the JADC2 folks are briefing. The point of this is not to say that we're going to stand up Geeks J in 16 days with 3 people. That's not, that's obviously not the point. But the point to say is that we can be more efficient and do it faster. All right, just wrapping it up here, and we'll do some questions. Just some thoughts here. So take a PaaS first approach. You really need to, push my advice would be your integrators, wherever your IT team is, to adopt PaaS services. They'll tell you it can't be done. I hear this all the time. I can't use a PaaS service. Why can't you? Well, they said I can't. It's easier for somebody to just dump your legacy app into a virtual machine and let somebody else deal with the patching and all these things. If you really prioritize serverless and PaaS, you can really make gains there. I can tell you our provisioning tool that we use, it's called ADAT. It's totally serverless. These things exist today, and try to make that your emphasis. As a IT practitioner in DoD, I'm constantly looking at, we need to lean forward, right? We have an ANA process that takes a long time. If you start a new thing now and you're doing virtual machines, that's kind of, and then you have to go through an ANA process. That's kind of how we get, yesterday's technology tomorrow, right? So always be kind of leaning forward, in the government. The second one, don't start from scratch, right? If you have a new cloud initiative, go to one of the major platforms that are out there. Take advantage of a baseline like this. But don't, recreate the wheel and, start your cloud adoption from scratch. And then the last one is, kind of a, to really get the benefit from cloud, we need to give, mission owners options, right? We need to make it easier for them to get to the cloud, and it's really, that simple. So, I think some of the governance things are well intended, but if you're restricting the mission owner's options, then, that's not going to be a good outcome for the warfighter. So that's all I got. I really appreciate. Oh, one more thing here. So please reach out to us. This is our website here. There's an inquiry page, and we'd love to hear from you and support you. All right, thank you. Really appreciate it. Now I think we'll do questions.
Hi, so first, just a compliment on the controls, because that's where the rubber meets the road, right? Like 132 controls could be 400 or 500 CCIs. So that's a fantastic demonstration of cost savings versus the tiered structure. We'll do this, but that could be a low level of effort. So good job. My question is, how do you get data to the analyst, the C&D analyst, from your environment?
That's an awesome
Is that a
question.
challenge, or where are we at?
That's a great question. So we do monthly updates of our baseline. A&R is actually our integrator on that. And the last month we did one where we were supporting, there's this concept of DCO, defensive, cyber operations. It's something they've been pursuing, frankly, for years, right? These projects, and we said, okay, can we use CSP native tooling and do it in a couple of weeks? And so that's what we did. So we used, in this case, Azure Sentinel, right? Azure Sentinel and Azure Lighthouse, and we're pulling data from AWS and from Salesforce and obviously Azure and things like that. So we're currently piloting that out with DISA CSSP, but we want to make this available, and there's interest. And we recognize that the CSSPs need to be part of this conversation as well, and I think we have capability there.
Are you looking into the CDS solutions for cloud from IL2 to IL6? I know Microsoft is currently working on that.
Yeah, no, we'd love, we would love that. IL6, I will tell you, just to be frank, for us, what we're doing, the challenge with leaning forward is, is you bump into service parity, right? So we see that a lot where there's a service that's available in commercial that's not available in gov. Well, we know that, but if you also look at the IL6 level, there are less services available. But cross-domain, is a huge area that we would definitely be interested in looking in, in the future. Is that it? I'm getting let off easy, huh? 8:15 in the morning. All right. Okay, well, really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
I know you don't remember me.
I do, actually. Yeah, I was just gonna say, it was Transcom, right? We saw each other down at Texas. Right?
Yeah, talking Jedi,
That's
talking
right. Oh, man.
early adoption into the
Still on a
environment.
good journey.
Right, well, I'm in the joint staff now.
I was just gonna say, so you're over at JC's.
I am. So I'll be reaching out to your team because we've got a project that's similar to the Blue Heron project. It's called Horses.
Yeah.
General Crawl stood up during the same OAR, OAW evacuation. We're actually still working in parallel with